Joe Flacco lobbies for David Njoku to convince Kevin Stefanski to overlook Shedeur Sanders, Kenny Pickett, and Dillon Gabriel. With Deshaun Watson sidelined and the Cleveland Browns offense wobbling in search of an identity, Joe Flacco's arrival was both unassuming and seismic. No longer the centerpiece of a franchise, the former Super Bowl MVP still carried the gravity of leadership and calm. What emerged, surprisingly, was one of the most electric quarterback-tight end duos the league had seen in years. The benefactor of this late-season surge was David Njoku. In just 5 games with Flacco under center, Njoku blossomed into the offensive weapon Cleveland had long hoped for since drafting him in 2017. He posted 390 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns in that stretch, averaging 6 receptions and 78 yards per contest. That was a significant spike compared to the modest 42.9 yards per game Njoku had averaged over the first 12 weeks of the season. It wasn't just volume, it was timing and trust. In Week 15 against the Chicago Bears, the Flacco and Njoku connection was undeniable. Njoku hauled in 10 receptions for 104 yards and a touchdown, putting together one of the finest performances of his career. The chemistry was sudden, yet surgical. A Pro Bowl bond forged in fire. Bleacher Report's Gary Davenport recently highlighted this synergy, calling attention to just how much Njoku benefited from Flacco's presence. If that carousel settles on Flacco for any period of time, it's worth noting he peppered Njoku with targets when he was in Cleveland 2 years ago, Davenport wrote. One game in particular on Week 14 against the Jacksonville Jaguars showcased how devastating the connection could be. Njoku caught 6 passes for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. The performance felt less like a fluke and more like a formula. For that stretch, Flacco and Njoku looked like they could walk into any playoff matchup and dominate. When the dust settled on the 2023 campaign, Njoku had racked up 81 catches, 882 yards, and 6 touchdowns, all career highs. The narrative of him being a raw, athletic tight end with untapped potential had finally been replaced by one of production and polish. While head coach Kevin Stefanski and general manager Andrew Berry have framed Njoku's emergence as part of his natural development, the spark lit by Flacco is difficult to ignore. Flacco moved on in 2024, joining the Indianapolis Colts. Still, the echoes of his short but impactful stint in Cleveland persist, with Njoku now entering the final year of his current $54,700,000 0-cents contract. He's eyeing a potential extension. If he can replicate the chemistry he had with Flacco, whether it's with a returning Deshaun Watson, a developing Dorian Thompson-Robinson, or even another veteran presence, he could become one of the premier tight ends in the league. Joe Flacco leaned back in his locker chair, the low hum of the Browns facility surrounding him like a familiar lullaby. He'd seen it all: playoff pressure, Super Bowl parades, and quarterback controversies more tangled than a Philadelphia cheesesteak order and rush hour. But nothing quite prepared him for the strange intersection of talent, loyalty, and legacy that this offseason had become. Across the locker room, David Njoku wrapped up a workout, sweat gleaming on his arms like a warrior's paint. Flacco caught his eye and nodded. It was time. "You got a minute, Chief?" Joe asked, standing with a grunt that betrayed years of quarterback hits. Njoku tilted his head. "Always. What's on your mind?" Flacco gestured to the empty film room, and the two disappeared from the main floor. Kevin Stefanski sat behind a desk littered with draft reports, scouting notes, and empty coffee cups. He looked like a man trying to calculate the speed of light using a TI-84. On his whiteboard, 3 names stood out in bold marker: Shedeur Sanders, Kenny Pickett, Dillon Gabriel. They were shiny, they were headlines, they were young, and they weren't who Joe Flacco wanted in his locker room. Flacco dropped into the chair opposite Stefanski later that evening, a calm resolve in his eyes. "Let me guess," Stefanski said before Joe could open his mouth. "You've got a hot take on the QB situation." Joe raised an eyebrow. "Wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't, but I brought backup." David Njoku stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. Kevin leaned back. "All right, this should be good." Flacco spoke first. "I've been around a long time, Kev, and I've played with all kinds of quarterbacks. Rookies with rocket arms, journeymen trying to find their last spark, and once-in-a-generation stars. What we need right now isn't hype, it's trust, chemistry, foundation. Stefanski folded his arms. You're saying Shedeur, Pickett, and Gabriel don't offer that? I'm saying they don't offer it. Not for this team. Not yet. Njoku chimed in, nodding. Joe and I, we've got a connection. You've seen it. Last season, that stretch when he came in mid-year, it wasn't just veteran instinct. He was leadership. He listened. He put the offense before his ego. Kevin tapped his pen. Shedeur's got NFL bloodline and vision. Pickett has playoff experience. Gabriel's a dual threat. This isn't Madden, guys. It's not about comfort zones. Joe smiled. Exactly. And that's why I want you to hear me out before you buy into a name.